It's not every day that you get to watch a game grow through the various stages of its dev cycle and be able to play those stages as they come along. But with Sword of Convallaria, I've had the opportunity to do so, and let me tell you, if you're a fan of Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre, similar titles, this is absolutely one that you're going to want to keep your eye on. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, typically this is where I would add my self-plug for the channel, and I still would have very much appreciated if you did all of the YouTube niceties, but instead today, I need to take a moment to thank the dev team behind Sword of Convallaria for sponsoring this video. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with them. It was very generous of them to reach out and offer to sponsor the video, as I very much enjoyed everything that I've seen about Sword of Convallaria thus far, and I absolutely intend to continue to cover it, so thank you very much for the support. It absolutely means the world. And while the game is currently in closed beta, it will be launching on July 31st, very soon, very exciting, on Steam, the App Store, and Google Play. You can click the link in the video description or scan this handy QR code that's on screen right now to pre-register on the website, and you'll get more information about when you'll be able to sign up to download and play as soon as it is available. So, what is Sword of Convallaria? We've covered it a couple of times here on the channel before, but in case that you missed it, I'll give a general overview of its gameplay, the influences on the game, what its development background is, and its nature as, yes, a dual gacha and single-player campaign title. If you're already familiar with some of these details, you'll find timestamps in the timeline down below where you'll be able to see all the different sections of the video and jump to the parts that are the most relevant to you. At its core, Sword of Convallaria is very much drawing inspiration from classic titles like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre. Obviously, we've covered those a lot here on the channel, as well as other similar titles, so if you're here, you probably know what you're getting yourself into. Battles tend to be small, focusing on anywhere from 2 to 5 playable characters and much larger numbers of enemy characters that tend to come in waves of reinforcements, and how you're going to maneuver around the battlefield and utilize the skills that each character in each class has will be absolutely vital in completing whatever your objective is, whether it be protecting a particular character, achieving a kill on a boss, getting to a certain area to escape some sort of calamity. All those types of things are standard fare and are all present here in Sword. It's very clear that the team at XD was looking at those types of titles when developing Sword of Convallaria, not just in terms of how its gameplay has been handled, but in terms of the story writing, the character writing, the world, the music. I mean, heck, they even got Hitoshi Sakimoto, the composer of Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre Reborn, as well as many other titles in the genre, to do the music. And you can absolutely tell as soon as you start playing Sword of Convallaria. You'll hear a lot of that music throughout this video. I haven't played enough of it yet to see exactly how this is going to stack up to those titans of the genre, but at baseline, it's very compelling and it feels very familiar. It's nostalgic in a way that I really appreciate when I boot up a new title that clearly knows where its inspirations lie, while still having a lot of new things to bring to the table and doing interesting things with the genre and with the mechanics that we didn't see in those titles. Not just a rehash, but clear inspiration. And that is exactly what I would hope to see from a title like this. As far as the dual nature of it being a gacha game, but also a single-player campaign game, this is how that's going to work. When you first start up the game, you will be introduced through the tutorial to the gacha side of the game. You'll go through the first few missions, learn about how combat works, controls, get the basics of the story, etc., get introduced to some characters, and then get kicked to your home base, where you'll be able to then proceed down one of two paths. You can either continue to explore the story of the gacha campaign and summon characters, level them up, get weapons, all that type of fun stuff, or you can dive into the Spiral of Destinies, the name of the actual single-player campaign. I've spent the majority of my time with said campaign. I've also delved into the gacha side a little bit so that I can explain it for this video, but my interest lies in that single-player story. So that's where the majority of my information is going to be. What's interesting is that beyond that initial tutorialization, I've not yet experienced a need to engage with one side of the game over the other. If you are solely a gacha player that wants to do online multiplayer, summoning characters, building them, all that type of stuff, as far as I've been able to see, you can just dive solely into that gacha side of things and be happy as a clam. If you are someone who prefers a linear story campaign with no online components, anything like that, you should also be able to just dive directly into the single-player campaign after the tutorial and be none the worse for wear. There's one mechanic that we'll get into where that might wind up not being the case, and both sides of the game do play into each other in terms of mechanics and some story elements and rewards that you can get for one by playing the other. But I don't think you need to engage with either one from the time that I've put into the game, which is at this point about 15 hours. The game is planned to be released on PC via Steam as well as mobile, and as far as I'm aware is going to be completely free to play wherever you decide to download it, whether you're going to be playing the gacha side or the single player side or both. So there's no barrier to entry. You can get in, check out the story, the mechanics, all that good stuff, free of charge. The one thing to note in terms of the single player campaign is that you require keys to unlock subsequent story chapters. This is something that I was initially wary of with my initial play of the game back when the demo was out, but I quickly learned that you get a lot of keys and you do not need to use them very frequently, and that seems to be the case here as well with this latest version of the game. In the 15 or so hours that I've spent with the game, I've only had to use 2 keys to progress the story, and you get them from a variety of different sources just by playing. From meta quests, general gameplay, and you can pick them up from the gacha mode as well, just for doing stuff in the campaign. So it's pretty easy to get a hold of, and they're even purchasable using the gacha currency from the cash shop. So if you're someone who has zero intention of engaging with the gacha mode of the game, you can spend the currency that you get for the gacha mode from the campaign freely to get keys. It's a little complex, but from what I've seen thus far, very easy to get a hold of these keys and keep on keeping on with the campaign. Now, let's quickly go over the gacha side of the game, what its mechanics are, and then we can dive more deeply into the story component. I've only spent about 3 hours with the online side of the game, enough to get a taste of the mechanics to describe them here. The gameplay itself is identical to the single player, all the way down to mechanics and combat, all that type of stuff. It does focus more on kind of puzzle fights and boss battles than strict narrative encounters, though narrative battles do exist and do also tie back into the single player story loosely if you do want to see how these two halves of the game are going to interact with one another. Notably, your characters will function slightly differently in terms of story characters in the gacha side compared to the single player side, with a greater focus on spending resources to level their skill trees and improve their stats. Either way, you are still able to summon generic characters with generic classes, akin to something like Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre, and they have been very useful from what I've seen thus far. They don't particularly get outclassed by any of the named characters. That may change and probably will change as you get to higher levels, but right now, they are perfectly viable, very important to have, and they complement my named characters quite nicely. As you go through the skill trees and use resources to level up your characters, you'll get access to different skills, as you might expect. And what's fun is that it is actually a skill tree. It's only two-sided, but as you get to each new level of it, you can choose one of 2 skills to permanently unlock for your character. With time, you'll be able to get enough resources of a different kind to be able to unlock both sides of the skill tree, but that's later down the line. I imagine that's more of an endgame type deal. And it's fun because you can actually then start to build your characters into particular paths and particular roles, which I really enjoy. Something that I have always liked about Tor and Final Fantasy Tactics is the ability to actually build craft any given character. So even if you have, say, multiple Dragoons in Tactics Ogre, you can have one set up to use axes, one set up to use lances, one set up to use crossbows. One of them might be better at dealing with beasts, one of them might be better at dealing with dragons, one of them might be a solo slayer, one of them might buff your party. Like, there's a lot of different things that you can do, and it does feel like you're going to have the ability to get a little bit of play between classes in sort of Convallaria as well. As you go through these different tiers of a character's growth, you'll also naturally get stat increases alongside your normal leveling, and you can also then increase the star level of given characters to get more skill slots, higher stats, etc. There's a lot of different progression systems here, so if you're someone that really likes the grind and really likes to be able to put effort into making a character as busted as possible, it seems like there's going to be a lot of room for that here. A lot of the resources that you're going to need for this leveling do require some grinding, a la MMOs and other gacha titles, but again, if you're here for that type of experience, you're probably expecting that and happy to see it. And the summoning mechanics for the gacha side are fairly standard for the genre from what I've seen. I'm not super well versed, but I've played a few in my time. Multiple character banners exist at a time with different focus characters and different pull rates, and there's also at least one weapon banner for weapons to equip on your characters. You can also just find standard weapons as you go. I don't know if you'll be able to find naturally over time really high power weapons, but again, at the point of the game that I was at in terms of the gacha gameplay, the basic stuff that I was finding was more than sufficient. All told, from what I've played of the online side of the game, which is Prologue and Chapter 1, I've been perfectly able to handle missions with the starter characters, their upgrades, and the handful of characters I've summoned using free mats. It's been fun. I have enjoyed seeing the different maps, seeing the different battles, encountering different scary enemies, and figuring out how to approach each of those fights. It's, as a complement to the main campaign, been an enjoyable experience and a fun place to be able to test my skills, learn about new classes, new abilities, and kind of get a taste of what might come in the story itself, which I've really enjoyed. That said though, let's move over to talking about the single-player campaign Spiral of Destinies and my experience with that. This campaign is a campaign that has roguelike elements, where you're encouraged to play multiple different times to experience different story routes a la Tactics Ogre, and get different outcomes, rewards, characters as you go. Each playthrough will see different random events and rewards occur, but will be anchored by guaranteed story events to make sure that things proceed smoothly. As I said previously, you'll start the game with the tutorial, be introduced to the gacha side of things, and once finished, you'll then be able to move into the Spiral of Destinies. This mode will allow you to go through the story, its cutscenes, linear battles, all that type of stuff in the same vein as staples of the genre. It's a little slow and easy to start, but I have been noticing it definitely ramps up its mechanics and difficulty as it goes. I've been starting to run into battles where I wind up losing a few characters, not with any sort of permadeath, but still, losing characters, having to actually figure out how can I hold choke points, how can I hold the line, keep characters healed up, utilize my skills to my advantage, make sure I'm not burning my NRG, which is your ability energy, too early, too quickly, so that if something scary comes along or I wind up in a sticky situation, I actually have the energy to use my more powerful skills down the line in battles. It's gotten far more interesting, and I'm very glad to see that, because I was very worried in my initial playtime with the demo back when, that it would just be super easy, mind-numbing, basic gameplay. And that is not the case at all. It's easy to get into, but I'm absolutely starting to see where the game is going to step in and say, okay, time to use your brain, big boy. How are you going to handle this? And I appreciate that. Especially coming down to the number of battles that you wind up having to deal with, because your characters have a stamina system. They can't just be deployed endlessly. You have to give them time to rest. If they get downed in battle, they actually lose more stamina, so you need to be careful about not letting your characters get downed all the time, or you won't have anyone who can actually engage in the next battles. It can get pretty nasty, and it's making me value my generic characters far more as well. I can't just spam named characters and use their slightly more powerful skills to clear battles with impunity and not worry about it. No, they're going to need time to rest. I need to make sure that they're available for the biggest, toughest missions that I want them for. So having my basic spearmen and mercenaries and guards and mages able to go in, have the levels and skills they need to be able to deal with the situation, and then spread around the stamina loss, massively important. In the Spiral of Destinies, character leveling follows a very standard leveling system with added vectors that can add bonus XP or training at the training yard to help you get your lower level characters get a bit more caught up, which again, like we just talked about, very important. You want a diverse roster, a wide roster that can handle a lot of different scenarios, because you never know when you might wind up in a situation where you just don't have the stamina to deploy your best characters all the time. As you level up, you'll increase your stats. As you complete missions, you'll get rewards like more skills that you can apply to characters or new weapons that you can give them, on top of the different facilities that you have at your town where you can do a lot of character management as well, which we'll talk about shortly. You start the game with a basic array of tanks, mages, DPS, and healers, as well as those few named characters, and over time, you'll unlock the ability to recruit random soldiers of various skill levels and classes. Thus far, it seems like you get an option of 2 different characters every few weeks. You can recruit both of them if you want, and then once the weeks have gone by, it'll refresh and you'll have more characters that become available. Now, Because each facility of the town is upgradable, and we'll talk about that in a second, I imagine that this will expand over time, so you'll get a wider range of characters and potentially more powerful characters that will become available to you, so you can recruit them into your army and either replace lower level guys or use them for dispatch missions or things like that, or just to have things that can keep up with whatever the current battle state is. Think of something like the Stagecoach in Darkest Dungeon 1, if you're familiar with that, where each week you would get a new cast of characters that you could choose to recruit or not. It's not every week, but it feels very similar to that, and it's always exciting to see what type of classes and characters are going to show up that I might then be able to work into the existing framework of my army. I've had basic mercenaries thus far, but I imagine as you increase your reputation with various different factions in the game, that you'll get access to some of their specific classes. Knights and sorceresses and wolf people and things like that. As you play the game, you'll also unlock named characters over time. These have been a little bit more few and far between, but when they do join up, they tend to be quite powerful, and they are a very nice boost to your army, especially when they often come with either advanced versions of classes you already have, or entirely unique classes from what I've seen thus far, that can give you a new angle to approach any given fight. Now let's take a second to talk about the different mechanics, progression systems, and facilities that you'll have access to in the town itself, because each week you'll be able to go back to your town that you are using your time and effort to defend, and use all of its resources and facilities to boost up your army. These different facilities include, but are not limited to, the training yard, the forge, the tavern, the haven, the Luxite workshop, and the sanctuary. Each of these facilities, of course, plays a different role. You can spend gold at the training yard to have characters trained to get more XP or new skills. The forge is used to create new gear and break down raw resources into usable materials. The tavern is where you recruit new characters, as we were just discussing. The haven allows characters to recover stamina, which they spend to go on missions, as we previously discussed. The Luxite workshop allows you to unlock party buffs and other tactics improvements, and the sanctuary allows you to buff a few characters at a time with a variety of benefits, such as improved HP or a damage buff when at full health, things like that. Most of these facilities require you to devote characters to them for at least a week at a time, making them unavailable for missions, so while you do get a lot of benefits from putting characters in these facilities, you gotta make sure that you're not gonna wind up accidentally gimping yourself by putting your best archer in a training facility for a week, only to find out that you're gonna be in a battle where you have to hold the line and you have the high ground against some swarm of enemies, and now you're down a ranged unit. So it's important to take the chance to look around, check out what your quests are going to be, check out what your battles are going to be, before you then come back to town and assign characters to all the spots that they're going to be in. I do appreciate that there's a little bit of tactical requirement there as well. It's not just brain dead going through, okay, who are my most tired people, put them in the haven to get rest, okay, who's my lowest level character, put them in the training yard to get XP, yada yada. Like, no, you got to actually make sure that you're going to have the people available when you need them, where you need them, and paying attention to that type of thing, very important. I've given you an overview of a lot of the mechanics here, but what does an actual campaign week look like? How does it proceed? Well, it proceeds as follows. Each week, your facilities will progress, and random events will occur that may impact your coming battles or ask you to spend resources to subvert negative consequences. Again, think of something like Darkest Dungeon 1, where when you come back from a campaign into a dungeon, you might find out that there's a swarm of mosquitoes plaguing your town and everyone's stress levels have gone up, or a wandering group of clerics have come through and healed all of your characters, or people have thrown a feast and now everyone's morale is going to be up. Different things like that can occur, positive or negative, that require you to either put resources towards subverting them or supporting them, or just a blanket buff or blanket nerf to your party and your progress that you're going to have to be able to work around. You'll then learn of upcoming story events, talk with different characters to find out what their feelings are on how your progress is going or what might be going on in the world around you. You'll hit up your facilities to put new characters in them and start new projects, and then choose your battles for the week. You can put characters on dispatch missions where they'll join caravans or wander in groups to defend them, where you'll get money, resources, all that type of stuff for your efforts, and then you'll see a variety of different quests that you can go on with different random rewards. These rewards include, again, things like money, building materials, or weapons, but most importantly, the ability to unlock new skills for characters. And how this works is interesting. This is where some of your roguelite influence comes in. After you complete a mission where you're going to unlock a new skill for a character, 3 characters will be offered this opportunity, and each of them will get a different random skill. This is the biggest, most important aspect of character building that I've seen thus far in the single-player campaign, and it's going to really show where your preferences lie when you keep winding up putting some of the best skills on particular characters, and then definitely not from my experience whatsoever, wind up in a situation where your frontline tank still has the same basic skill that she's had the entire campaign, and suddenly can't quite keep up with what her task requires of her anymore, and you gotta then kind of put some focus into getting her some new skills over the coming weeks. It can definitely be very swingy, and you can kind of surprise yourself in terms of, oh, this character is now way underleveled in terms of skills from where the game clearly wants her to be. Don't be like me. Make sure that you're spreading around your new skills and keeping all of your characters relatively up to speed with each other. Very, very important. Once you've done all of these standard weekly things, you will also have story-critical battles that will crop up from time to time that require more effort, typically are a little bit more difficult, may have cutscenes attached to them, either in-engine or animated, push story events forward, introduce new characters, and generally keep things moving. Some of them have actually even been difficult enough that they've required me to retry from various points using a sort of rewind system that you'll be familiar with from modern games in the genre, and required certain characters being brought or dedicated to certain tasks. There was one mission in particular where I was tasked with defending a sorceress barrel from a group of marauding mercenaries, and let me tell you, as a squishy mage, she got blown up pretty quickly. I had to rewind, dedicate a mage to actually sticking with her and dumping heals into her, while the rest of my party moved around and dealt damage alongside of her. Once I figured out what I needed to do, it really wasn't that bad, but it definitely was one of the turning points where the game made me sit up and go, oh, okay, I have to pay attention here. Good. This is good. I enjoy this. Overall, the weekly progression of the campaign has a really good cadence to it that I very much enjoy, and I'm excited to see how things expand even further as I finish unlocking all of the different facilities, getting them upgraded, and begin unlocking access to different regions, characters, and classes to see how I can grow my army and develop my tactics from there. Really, the only major critiques that I have of Sword of Convallaria, in terms of really both of its modes, are small party sizes, which have gotten better over time. Again, only being able to deploy 2 or 3 characters is a little bit of a drag. We've gotten up to the point where I'm typically deploying 5, which is standard Final Fantasy Tactics fare. I'd like to see a little bit more, but we'll see. The game might not be balanced around that. So it's, it could be a little bit of a problem for you if you like to have bigger party sizes. And the other aspect is still kind of middling dialogue quality. The small party sizes do make sense given the narrow and snappy mission design that is clearly very intentional for Sword of Convallaria and does work well with the game structure. Maybe we'll get just a couple battles with bigger party sizes and it'll be a little bit of a treat, we'll see. The dialogue, though, has been an ongoing critique of the community at large, which I share. There is plenty of work to be done fixing grammar and making the overall character dialogue flow more smoothly. But fortunately, this is a fairly easy fix, so while it's an important note to address, it's not a huge black mark against the game like some fundamental mechanical problem would be. As far as the overall experience of Sword of Convallaria is, I mean, I love it. I absolutely adore it. I know I've had a lot of discussions with people in my community talking about the quality of the gameplay, of the music, visually. I mean, the game is just beautiful. You've been seeing it through this whole video. It's an incredibly impressive looking title. And the only real concerns that I've seen from people are those who don't want to engage with the gacha side of things, which I totally understand, but I really want to emphasize that it does not seem like you need to in any way, shape, or form, really. You'll see it when you first come into the tutorial. If you enjoy that type of thing, then you can go whole hog on it. I certainly will be checking it out. But if you just want that single-player experience, Sword of Convallaria is gacha. I've been loving it, it's super fun, and it makes me feel like I'm playing a modern version of the games that I grew up loving, like, again, Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre. It's a new experience in the genre that is desperate for more high-budget, high-effort titles to go along with all the excellent indie titles that have been coming out. And I'm really hoping that Sword of Convallaria is something that a lot of people pick up and enjoy going forward, because I certainly am going to be. That said, though, what are your thoughts? I'm very curious to hear what everyone has to say about this title as we get closer to its release, and after you see everything that we've seen in this video today and heard what I have to say about it. Are you planning on checking it out? Are you going to play on PC, on mobile? What's your plan with that? Are you super excited for the gacha side, the single-player side, both? Let me know your thoughts on all of that, because I definitely want to do more content for it, and based on what you guys are interested in, that's how I'm going to shape what I do. Guides, story discussion, character builds, all of it's on the table, so give me your thoughts in the comments down below, and we will proceed apace as soon as the game is out. Thank you once again to XD and the Sword of Convallaria team for sponsoring this video. It means the most, it is absolutely a huge help, and thank you to all of you who have watched and continue to support in the community as well. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.